those remarks, and I look forward to our discussion. But before we turn to our discussion, I wanted to take a moment to recognize that today is 1 year since the dictatorship in Tunisia has jailed great political leader and great activist Rashid Ghannouchi. And I hope you can all join me in wishing him hope and inspiration, and sending our message of hope and inspiration that he will be released from his unjust imprisonment. I think, as most of you know, the Tunisian dictatorship relentlessly harassed Mr. Ghannouchi ever since CSID was able to usurp power in the country, subjecting him to numerous interrogations and incursions into his home, and finally using its now controlled judiciary to bring bogus charges against him, for which he is now facing 3 years of imprisonment. It is a very sad day, but I am heartened by the optimism and hope that Mr. Ghannouchi is giving to all of us in allowing us to consider his continued imprisonment and the imprisonment of other political detainees in Tunisia today as a hopeful sign of resistance, as a hopeful refusal to bow to tyranny. We are all indebted and grateful to the sacrifices that Mr. Ghannouchi is making by refusing to bow his head to this tyranny and giving us strength to resist and fight against the continued oppression in the country. So I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on that today. Before turning to question and answer, and inviting those of you to please come to the stage. We have until 12:17, so please introduce yourself and please make a question if you can, and not comments. Starting there.
So I have two questions. My name is Salih Yasun. I am an assistant professor at Virginia Military Institute, focusing on political science. My first question is for Mr. Darderi. First of all, I'm really sorry about the suffering of Egyptian parliamentarians. My question is, what do you see the future of your party in Egypt moving forward? Do you see any future for your party in the near term or in the long term? And do you see any scenarios for transition away from the current military regime in Egypt? Again, in the near term or more in the long term perspective. Should I ask my second question or wait?
Let's give him a chance to respond, maybe, okay, especially if it's for another speaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your support and for your concern about the suffering of not only the 100 members of parliament, but the 60,000 political prisoners, not only the 60,000, but the rest of the country, because it is suffering from lack of freedom of speech, lack of freedom of movement. People are not free, are being suffocated. And it's very unfortunate that we here in America, as an Egyptian American, we send our tax dollar money to support such a authoritarian, criminal, dictatorial regime. That's very important to be said. Now, concerning the future, the Freedom and Justice Party was the majority party when the military coup took place. Because there is no freedom in Egypt now, so it is very difficult to project what is going to happen in the near future. But in the long term, the members of the Freedom and Justice Party are determined to continue their democratic march. They are insisting on democratization of Egypt, and will continue with what will work. They will continue the work with other political parties, and now they're developing alliances here and there. There are many attempts in promoting a better alternative, not only for the Freedom and Justice Party members, but for all Egyptians. And I look forward for a better future for all Egyptians, where we have the rule of law as the way to go, and where we have the military goes back to its barracks, and the civilians will be able to run the country, and then there will be peaceful transition of power.
I will ask my second question later.
Okay. All right. Take one from this side.
All right. I guess it's good afternoon now. My name is Sam Green. I'm a faculty member at Shepherd University in political science and global studies. My question touches on the rule of law as well as Uzbekistan and Egypt. Whoever would like to answer can. It strikes me that a common theme between these three presentations is the absence of equality before the law in terms of political participation, and sometimes also for everyday citizens. And I wonder to what extent reforms are basically performative and what external actors can do to encourage reforms to be less performative and more real in that area. Thank you.
Sure.
Can I get to my slides? I'm sorry. Yeah. So I'll be brief, and there's lots of questions. But I think what I want to emphasize is that it makes sense to talk about things around rule of law and equality in terms that people actually frame them in society. So I mean, this is just one little snapshot, but the the data that I collected from lawyers and law students in Kuwait and Qatar very clearly articulates that justice, and we know this of course from the Arab Spring, is a value and a norm that's articulated as very important. And there are all these different ways of framing rule of law that resonate in societies, and I mean, there's no simple answer with the challenges of authoritarianism in the world and in the region. But at the very least, having conversations around how legal values are framed within societies that then might empower transformation, is one way to approach things. Thanks.
In regard to the situation in Egypt, external factors can do a lot because the situation in Egypt, the country is closed, and it's very difficult for Egyptians inside Egypt to participate in any work of promoting democracy or equality in front of the law. In fact, the military regime is making sure that there is no equality. Even the General Sisi said that he wants only few people to be highly educated, and then they lead the rest of the country. It is that mindset that runs the country. But in spite of this, there are so many Egyptians in exile now and living throughout the whole world, indeed. And I hope that external actors will be able to help create a space for those who are in exile to speak about what is going on inside Egypt, and also help promote certain ways of creating coalitions and helping certain ways of promoting alternative to the existing situation. I was just talking about Uzbekistan, and I wanted to know really how Nahda, for example, Renaissance movement, or other movements are doing in combating military dictatorship, especially when this military dictatorship is supported by regional powers as well as by countries that I used to think of them as democratic and promoting democracy. And to be honest with you, I always thought, I graduated from University of Pittsburgh, and I always thought of America as a great country supporting democracy, human rights, and rule of law, until I discovered the reality that the United States of America is not supporting democracy, human rights, and rule of law in Egypt. And that's a fact that we need to share together so that we find ways and means from here and in relationship to the Egyptians living in different parts of the world.
Just a very quick word on Uzbekistan. So there are internal conflicts in the country, clearly. First, we lack a real culture of law in spite of the reforms that have been attempted. Certainly this was very much the case under Islam Karimov. It has persisted under Mirziyoyev. However, that situation is changing. There is a good amount of top-down judicial reform, replacement of judges, and greater will. Those who are not beholden to the former leader have been replaced. But we still have a tradition of maintaining power and control, which harkens back to the post-Soviet legacies of independence of the Central Asian republics, Uzbekistan foremost among them. But we also have an issue, a tougher one in some ways, that it pervades inequality, and that is, frankly, traditions in the country whereby women are kept, in spite of what the Constitution may say, and may say even stronger today, the real circumstances for women and women's rights in the country is very much wanting. And this is being pervaded by men who see them as second-class citizens and will block efforts for women to become leaders in their communities, to speak out, even have mobile phones, and is in many ways prohibited, not legally, but factually. And so we're fighting some cultural norms, and it gets back to, I think someone mentioned earlier, this kind of this duality or this fight between traditions and modernity. We want everybody to have equal rights, but there are certain practices that predate even the Soviet period that are difficult to root out and have become further now ingrained in this era of so-called independence and freedom. Not easy to resolve, but as I mentioned before, a culture of law, a mindset of equality, building human rights from the beginning in school, civic legal education is a vital step in taking that direction.
Thanks. Radwan, how much time is there?
10
more
minutes.
Okay. I have to depart, but maybe you can take over the moderation. Unfortunately, I have a very fixed commitment, but maybe we'll take the...
I think the gentleman there was before me.
Okay, the next question, and I thank you all, and you'll continue moderating. Okay.
Hi, my name is Jackson Tisdale. I'm a foreign policy intern.
Can you speak more directly with the mic, please?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. My name is Jackson Tisdale. I'm a foreign policy intern with the National Interest Foundation. And my question is, so given that there is this religious nationalism that is leading towards democratic backsliding, on the other hand, there's also religious civil society organizations that kind of promote democracy. For example, in Nicaragua, where the Catholic Church has kind of opposed the Ortega regime. So my question is, how can these religious groups kind of combat this rhetoric coming from populists who tried to use religious rhetoric to co-opt the public?
And is your question addressed to a specific panelist?
Open for the panel, but particularly for Dr. Rahim.
For whom?
Dr. Rahim.
Okay, I might stand up because I'm really jet lagged, and this will keep me awake. Right, with regard to religious nationalism, I've been looking at the Tunisian political trajectory really carefully, and I found Rashid Ghannouchi's writings, in particular the latest publication with Professor Marsh, to be really insightful in terms of building a Muslim democracy, the nuts and bolts of building that. And you rightly pointed out there are various religious nationalists that adopt different perspectives in terms of their theological understanding, their reading or rereading of the religious texts. And the problem with Malaysian, most Malaysian religious nationalists, Islamists, in particular the hardline Islamists, is that they're very much inspired by Wahhabi interpretations of the texts, the Islamic texts and the Quran. And the Saudis have done a great job promoting Wahhabi Salafi Islam, particularly from the 1980s. So that has become mainstream Islam in Malaysia in, I would go so far as to say, Indonesia as well. Not so much Indonesia, but, and also many parts of the Islamic Muslim world. So we need more Rashid Ghannouchis that are building that interpretation of Islam based on social justice, based on equal citizenship rights, equal meaning, equal rights for men and women, which means a reinterpretation of Sharia law. Mainstream Sharia readings do not accept that men and women have equal rights, not complementarity, but equality. And also equal citizenship rights for Muslims as well as non-Muslims. That means in Muslim majority states, non-Muslims can hold leadership positions, cabinet positions. The current Chief Justice in Malaysia is a woman, Tengku Maimun. That is one of the positives that have come out of the reformist government. So that is why I didn't have time to develop this. The notion of equal citizenship rights is really, really important in the Muslim world. Thank you.
So go ahead.
Yeah, hello. My question, I guess, will be, my name is Bedirhan Mutlu. I'm a PhD student at the George Washington University from Mr. Abdul Mabgout Dareri. I was in Egypt. When I first went to Egypt in 2016, just a couple of hours after my flight arrived in Egypt, there was a military coup attempt in Turkey. And my friends in Egypt were puzzled by my stance there because I was almost crying because of what was happening. And then they thought I was a big supporter of Erdogan. And I said, no, I criticize Erdogan on so many instances. And they were like, what's happening here? And I'm looking back to the coup in 2013 in Egypt in the sense that, well, you condemned people who supported the coup, but let's be honest, a lot of the people and parties who were, even those who were in coalition with your party in the parliament, supported the coup in Egypt, and that's a problem. And as opposed to the 2016 one in Turkey, where a lot of the opposition parties who were critical of Erdogan, and a lot of people who were critical of Erdogan, like myself, categorically opposed the coup attempt. But the issue is people see this in sort of a good thing in Turkey. That's not what I'm, sorry.
Sir, in the interest of time, could you get to your question, please?
So my question is, in Turkey, it took 2 coup attempts and 2 military interventions, though, for the public to arrive there. You know, it was not natural. So what can we do in Egypt or in other countries to achieve this kind of thing without waiting 80 years, like in Turkey, to achieve this kind of popular sort of unity against military coups or other kinds of coups?
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm wondering if we could just go and collect a series of questions in the interest of time. Then we, as a panel, will handle them collectively. Go ahead, ma'am.
This question is for Lily, Dr. Rahim. So I'm Anizonova, Muslims for Progressive Values. I'm originally from Malaysia, so I'm very much in tune with the what's going on there in regards to the fascist sentiment and how Islam is being practiced there, having family there. So my question to you is that how can we actually create more civil society-minded and faith-based minded organizations that that repel this ethno-Islamist agenda that you're talking about, when anyone that deviates from the Islamic or state definition of Islam is accused of being an apostate and blasphemous and is thrown in jail.
Okay, now, go ahead, please.
I'm Ashraf Haidari, Afghan ambassador and associate with Georgetown University. My question is for Dr. Boyer. Now, with the fall of Afghanistan's young democracy and the way it was unfortunately betrayed in 2021, how that has affected demand among Uzbeks, rank and file, for the institutionalization of democracy, human rights, and so forth in Uzbekistan, given your extensive research there. Thank you.
And anybody else who's considering, please step up.
Yeah, my name is Ghulam Rabbani. I am an exile here. I came from Bangladesh, who is the largest Muslim, 4th largest Muslim populated country in the world. And my question directly to Mr. Anthony Bauer. I think he is working for International Foundation for Electoral Support or Electoral System. And I know we are, I'm the victim of electoral autocratic system. And, the whole, the enemy of democracy, they are all united. They have consortium. But who are seeking democracy, demanding democracy, they are actually innocent person. And they don't have enough power, they don't have enough consortium. So my question is to you, I know you have a lots of reform system, policy, and want to adopt in different countries, but how do you support that innocent people who have not that much power to control their electoral engineering, and which is conducting in the name of democracy, and at the same time they have all external support to ruin the democracy in the country, so the normal civil society has no power to control this system. So I just want to know, IFS has any types of mechanism to control these types of electoral engineering? Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we just go and start from left to right?
Concerning the question about between Egypt and Turkey, the Turkish experiment is somewhat different. It has similarities to the situation in Egypt, but it is also different from that of Egypt due to the colonial heritage in Egypt. What happened in Egypt is colonialism established a corrupt system that was followed by a military rule that kept the corruption going on until today. In Turkey, the free and fair election was always going on, even during the military coups. After it happens, a transfer election, the new government. That does not happen in Egypt. What is there that we can do? We can do a lot. On the part of Egyptians, we need really to learn how to live together. We need not to allow dictatorship to separate us, divide and conquer, use the same colonial strategy. We need also to be able to come to this equal citizenship understanding, so that all of us can enjoy the democracy and the freedom, not as a group of people against other group of people. If we succeed in doing this, I think we'll be able to do a better job in the coming years. I expect the current regime is not sustainable, economically is not sustainable, politically is not sustainable, so it is not likely to go. What we need to do is, how can we prepare ourselves for the next democratic wave, which I hope will be able to present a better alternatives on all levels for all Egyptians. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll take the second question first. I'm trying to write these down. The electoral engineering. Yeah, I mean, combating the institutions of power to enable a circumstance in which upstart grassroots candidates have a chance at winning is difficult. I mean, it's why I'm far grayer in person than in the picture that Wardan kindly put in the program. It's trying to figure these types of answers out. But in such a regime, the first and foremost thing that often I found is essential is being able to convey information about what's happening. Yes, you're going to have a closed media environment. Yes, you're going to have control of the levers of power. You're going to have control over the political finances. But the first step I've seen in candidates being able to break through this somehow is being able to convey information, share information across the means that are available. And there are many more available now through social media. For example, in Uzbekistan, I'm not holding it up as the best example, but they use Telegram to convey information on a lot of different subjects. When the system is cooked, it's very difficult to change it. But a little piece at a time, once you have recognition of what the problem is and you have individuals who will stand up for the causes of open and transparent democracy. And by the way, this also includes something I'd mentioned is vitally important, is the existence of domestic monitoring organizations and groups that will hold the government accountable for what it's doing and how it's performing. Once you have these, you can start discussions on the issues that do impact the elections, the electoral legislation, for example, the illicit financing, disinformation, the technology facilitated gender-based violence, which is part of the information flow, what's keeping women candidates from being more active and successful. But information is probably first and second on quite a long list that I would say. But there's no, shall we say, easy way out, no panacea to solve it. But also civil society, as I mentioned, in education, not accepting the status quo any longer. And we've seen some cases where civil society has played an instrumental role in supporting regime change in the past. And it starts with a very active mindset and the refusal to accept the situation. On the, I think the first question dealt with expectations after 2021. I would say just in short that we have a very evident generational divide in the country where the group that was educated or came up in the Soviet or immediate post-Soviet period feels almost in a way apathetic as to what could happen. And they're quickly becoming more of a minority. You have a group, however, of half of the population that, while at times downtrodden, has far greater expectations for what the country can and should be, both within the region and on the world stage, and they're not accepting that they're not going to get what they want. They're tired of being forced to leave the country in search of work. They want to build a strong community, a strong economy, and a strong country at home. And it's up to, we've said many times, a generational change to really tip the balance. And we have the numbers in Uzbekistan. We'll see if we have the willpower.
We have to wrap it up, so please, like half a minute.
I'd be delighted to engage anybody on the politics of the rule of law, learn from your experiences, or share my data. Anybody who's interested in that topic. Thanks.
Okay, quickly, with regard to the Malaysian political experience, regions matter. Where a country is located does matter. In Southeast Asia, as I noted in my presentation, Indonesia is arguably the most democratic Muslim majority state in the world. In 1998, a military dictatorship was overturned, and since then, the military has not intervened in civilian matters. So I think we need to look at what has happened in Indonesia. It's certainly not a perfect democracy. There are many flaws. Recently, Indonesia's president, there has been a presidential turnover, and it was bloodless, and those defeated accepted the winner. So the Indonesian Pancasila democracy. In the case of Malaysia, and I'll end off quickly, Malaysia's constitutional post-colonial state established a democratic constitution. I think Malaysians need to look closely at the post-colonial state constitution, where there are many guarantees to civil liberties, political freedoms, and so on. So in other words, moving forward by looking at the past. In addition to that, Malaysia's national ideology is called the Rukun Negara. In this national ideology, it does categorically state that democracy, liberalism is to be promoted, that Malaysians should, well, unless one is a staunch atheist, but God matters, but it doesn't say Islam or Muslims have to abide by the Quran or Islam, and minorities should not subscribe to their own faith. So it says God, but it doesn't specifically state Islam. So in other words, the freedom of faith, religiosity is all there. So in other words, look back to tradition, to historical tradition in terms of moving forward towards establishing a vibrant Muslim democracy. Thank you.
Thank you.